today I'm going to be talking about the various item loadouts that I use, and I'm going to be analyzing and explaining why I use them for that one thread that the guy made on the forum. So I'm going to go through all the classes and all my loadouts. Now I'm going to start with Scout, which is my most played class, and I usually just use stock, and then I either use Criticola or milk, not that one, and then I use the Sandman. This is more, this isn't like a terribly serious loadout, but I definitely use it a lot in pubs, just because I like the ability to like outplay your opponents by using the Sandman and kind of like the milk. And Critical I'm trying to get used to using because I honestly think the weapon is overpowered, so I'm gonna try to like get comfortable with that, so then when ranked comes out, then I can kind of abuse that while it's still good. The Sandman I will actually use if I'm playing Scout on defense, but it got banned last season, so I couldn't use that anymore. But using this loadout is quite effective. The stock milk and bat, because on defense, because like they have to like aggress into you, so if you can just milk them and when they're all pushing the card, or kind of like stun somebody from far away, it's pretty effective. So this is what I kind of like to use on defense, or just have fun in pub with it. Now this is what I believe to be the most powerful Scout loadout, which is basically is a scattergun of choice. So basically either Soda Popper, BFB, or stock. I usually use stock, but sometimes I'll use the Soda Popper, but not a huge amount. Then Winger, because the utility that this item gives is just too good to pass up. Before, I used to use the pocket pistol, then I nerfed it, so now I basically only use the Winger. I used to use maybe like a 40% Winger pocket pistol, but now I basically use the Winger exclusively. And then, you know, triple jump, massive utility, too good to pass up. This is the loadout that I used to use when, you know, when you were kind of like pocketing a Scout, kind of like for sixes. But I don't really use this anymore because, again, they nerfed the pocket pistol, so there's really no point in using that. I guess this is what I'd use in a sixes game, if I'm being pocketed as a Scout. Maybe pistol, but again, the utility that the Winger provides. Oh, forgot about the Guillotine. Guillotine is extremely strong. I've actually used it a lot in centers. It's pretty ridiculous because it has such a short cooldown, and you can just kind of like, because the Scout doesn't have the ability to really spam out like choke points in any way, but if you use this, you definitely can. It also gives you kind of like a long range alternative to like bother snipers. And if you're like running at somebody and let's say it's a sniper or a Delman, you can kind of like run at them, and your scattergun only has such an effective range, so if you kind of like throw that, it will always do an instant 50 damage, no matter what the distance is. So you can throw it a little bit sooner and then like assault them with your scattergun when the damage is going to be 60 or higher, instead of kind of like awkwardly shooting them for a 30 damage shot and then closing the gap and then doing 60 and 80 and whatever. This will always do 50 damage, which is very nice. Plus it has a short cooldown, so you can use it every 6 seconds. It's really good. And this is just my MVM loadout. I use that in MVM. It's pretty self-explanatory. Extra jumps. Yeah. Next class, Soldier. Black Box, Roamer, Whip. Pretty self-explanatory. Black Box got nerfed, so it's not quite as effective. I guess you can use the stock rocket launcher. I still think Black Box is viable, especially if you're roaming, but it's really personal preference at that point. Again, Conquer, very strong on defense. This loadout is very good on payload, very good on defense, extremely good on steel, crazy good on steel. You should basically always use this on steel. And then just pocket sixes, Soldier. Whip would be better, but you can't use the whip in 6s. What's my last loadout? That's just rocket. Pyro! Good old degreaser flare gun power jack. Nothing to see there. This is Pybro. Now the reason I use reserve shooter with the Pybro loadout is because shotguns can destroy stickies. So if your sentry is getting spammed out by stickies, then you can use the shotgun to clear them. And because it's kind of awkward to use a flare gun to destroy stickies, I guess you can use the scorch shot to destroy stickies as well. But then kind of like messes with your ability to move. You can also use the shotgun to kind of the scorch shot to harass snipers that are like trying to harass your engineer. So that's also a pretty good alternative. I've used that before in centers. I do prefer shotgun and reserve shooter though. I guess you can use shotgun or scorch shot for Pyro loadout, but either one really works. The reason I like to use the reserve shooter is because if you air blast an Uber, say whatever, Demoman Heavy, and then shoot them in the air, it will still mini crit, but it won't do any damage. So it will push them back farther. It's really an interesting mechanic. So I like to use reserve shooter. Since it's banned in centers, or it's banned in competitive, usually I just use the stock shotgun. But again, occasionally I will use the scorch shot. I haven't truly decided which is the best of the two, but I just go back and forth. Backburner loadout. I don't use this very often. Sometimes I use it in pubs. Sometimes I'll use it in centers, but not a huge amount. I like to use the shotgun with what's it called? Backburner, because if you use the backburner a lot, you'll notice people will always get away with just like 4 HP, and it's very annoying. So you can use the shotgun to finish them off. I know like 2 people that use the flare gun with the backburner. I do not like that at all. And then flog, you know how that works. I don't use the flog very often though. I don't like it. Demoman, just stock Demoman loadout. Nothing to see there. This is a very interesting loadout that I pub with. I like to call it the roaming Demoman because, you know, Quickie Bomb Launcher is a very aggressive weapon, and with the increased movement speed and HP of the booties, you can just kind of like roam around the map and pretend you're a soldier. Then we got Demo Knight. I was testing Zetareach. I usually don't use that. Usually use the golf club when I'm playing Demo Knight, and sometimes I will play Pipe Knight, as I like to call it. Demo Knight, I think, is pretty strong. I haven't used the new buffed shields, but I usually just use the Tunner for the extra mobility. I've heard really good things about the Persian Persuader, but I haven't played that yet, so I cannot speak. I usually just use the Islander because I like the snowball feature and the extra mobility. Heavy, I almost never play heavy, but I'll go over it anyway. We got, you know, stock heavy, we got defensive heavy, we got roaming heavy because you eat the chocolate, run faster with the eviction notice, and then ambush people with this Tomizov. Then you still have like tiny chocolate bars that you can feed your teammates. Basically only do that in pubs and basically only do that for contracts. I almost never play heavy. Engineer, here we go. So after the change that they made to the Jag, before I used to use the Jag 24/7, but now I only use it to set up, and then I use the hip. So when you're setting up, you clearly use the Jag and the short circuit to dissuade like projectiles. Set up with the Jag, then switch to a normal wrench and the Wrangler once you are done setting up. Then we have a battle NG and for King of the Hill maps, and then I have a cart pusher NG, which I can't actually use in. I can only do in pubs. I can't do in competitive because the short circuit is banned. Someday it will be unbanned, I'm sure. Medic, we got Uber, Kritzkrieg, Quick Fix, and Vaccinator, which I almost never use. Usually just use these 3. I like to use the Assault and Bell, with the Quick Fix, because you only really use the Quick Fix when you're trying to save a point and there's very little time left, and you gotta say, oh, you know, sack for the point, heavy's lit. But generally I just use these two. Sometimes I use quick fix. Sniper. Now, I usually use a Jradi Vishwaka. I use that a good 60% of the time. Depending on whether I'm on offense or defense, I will use the Machina or the Bizarre Bargain. That's that. And the other, say, 30% of the time, I'll use the Cozy Camper or the Danger Shield if I see it appropriate. Usually I don't need the Danger Shield. Cozy Camper. Third loadout, this is strictly an MGE loadout. I basically only use it when I'm playing MGE. Almost every single kill on here is from MGE. Yeah, it's basically just a stock strength sniper. And this is just a gimmick loadout that I wanted to try out. I never actually do that. Finally, we got Spy. This is the loadout I use the most, which is what's it called? Stock Revolver, Knife for survivability, and Dead Ringer for survivability. And the way I play this loadout is I usually just run around and shoot people, use the Dead Ringer to escape. If I actually want to play Spy and not a slow scout with a single fire gun, I will play with this loadout, which is actually a Spy loadout, and then I'll actually use my knife to kill things instead of ending the game with 2 backstabs. Yeah, Cloak and Dagger is the most obvious watch to use for Spy, and, you know, I don't really see a point to not use the Ambassador when you're playing Spy, especially since you can use the Cloak and Dagger to, like, you know, position yourself correctly and then just shoot somebody with that thing. I almost never use stock Spy. I used to use the Diamondback a lot back when they buffed it, and I kind of outgrew it because I kept finding myself wanting to shoot people more and not wanting to backstab people, so I basically stopped using the Diamondback after. Yeah, there was this one game that after like 45 minutes of playing Spy on Upward, I ended the game with like 6 backstabs, and I thought I actually never backstab people anymore. I'm gonna stop using the Diamondback. And that's why this loadout exists, is to encourage me to actually backstab people. So big earner, you know, very strong knife, and then you get backstabs with the thing, and it gives you the crit. Yeah, those are my loadouts, and those are why I use them.
Yo, heads up!